We've heard the news this morning that the Met Police, including child protection officers, have just voted to take strike action. This is over what they regard as
they're the civilian corps handlers, aren't they?
Yes.
999 corps handlers and also child protection officers. They handle the corps civilian. But when you're hearing this, as Richard, I'm sure, was about to say, you're thinking, crikey, you know, this is a moment, and you realise how the impact that those people have, you know?
Look, I don't know what the precise details of the dispute, but it is worrying. I think the government will be very concerned about the strike because I think it's a frontline service. But I don't know what exactly they're asking for. And I think there was always a risk once the government came in and did a deal with some of the unions on pay, that there'd be other strikes or other groups of people.
Or
striking.
they might be saying, "Listen, we're overwhelmed, and we're trying to do a good job in answering calls like this."
Of course they are, but we know the budgets are stretched, and people are feeling. Everyone is feeling under pressure.
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody wants to see strike action, and actually, workers who go on strike, it's usually the last resort for them as well, in whatever sector they're in. So I just hope that. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but presumably, is it mayoral level? Is it Sadiq Khan at that level with the Met? I mean, is it the government? But hopefully they can get this resolved pretty quickly.
It's a dispute about their freedom to work from home. That's right. At the core of it. Look, I really want to find time to talk about another story this morning, which hit the papers yesterday. It's been brewing for a while. Case in Dubai involving a British boy. He's 18. He's called Marcus Fakana, 18 years old. He's from Tottenham. He was out there at the back end of the summer with his parents, and he met another British girl who was 17. She's 18 now, but she was just a few months younger than him. And they basically had a holiday romance. And she came home with her parents a few days before he was due to leave, and her mother found out that the couple had slept together. And her reaction was to telephone the Dubai police and inform them that this sexual relationship had taken place, which, of course, is completely legal in this country. I mean, if it had happened under the stars in Devon or Cornwall on a summer holiday, we wouldn't raise an eyebrow. But in Dubai, you have to be 18 if you're going to have consensual sex. There's no suggestion that the sex that they had wasn't consensual. It was. However, under the law in Dubai, he was arrested and he was found guilty yesterday, and he is spending a year in one of Dubai's most notorious high-security prisons with rapists, murderers and terrorists. What can we do about this?
Well, it's a very brutal case.
He feels abandoned, basically, is what he's saying, and his parents are saying.
I mean, I don't understand what the mother was trying to do. I mean, clearly, that was the mother of the girl calling up the Dubai authorities.
Would she have done it to her own son?
That's extraordinary, and I don't know what's going on there. The problem is, though, that they've got very strict rules. I've just actually been there the last few days. Obviously, great economic growth, but it's a very authoritarian country, and the rules are the rules. And if you fall one side of them, then they come down on you very hard. Now, I'm sure that the lad in question probably didn't know that.
They didn't know. They had no idea that they were in breach.
And that's the problem. But it doesn't surprise me, I'm afraid, that those authorities take such a sort of hard line on that kind of transgression. The rules, very rule-based autocracy.
What do you make of it?
I mean, it's a bewildering story, really, isn't it? Actually,
yes.
I mean, it's so sort of from what we're the UK, and as you said, our rules here. It just sounds
and around most of the world. I mean, Europe, America, Australia, you name it.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a very strict regime. However, the UK government, I would hope, would be making urgent representations to Dubai. And actually, I think, did you say they're from Tottenham? Well, if it's from Tottenham, that means that
David Lammy
is the Foreign Secretary.
So getting stuck in.
I think that's the channel that you would go through. But you've got to acknowledge, because what they'll be very sensitive of is the coverage. They're very, very sensitive of that. But at the same time, they want to show that they are a rule of law, very strict.
They do.
And it feels a conversation might need to happen with the families involved as well as to why the calls were made.
That's all very bizarre.
Complex,
I don't know what's going on.
There's something going on.
Yes, that's right.
Should we have a moment? Should we have a moment of lightness out of a very dark story, actually, but something that hopefully is a little flicker of hope. So this was the incredible moment when CNN reporter Clarissa Ward freed a Syrian prisoner. So this prisoner had been locked in a windowless cell, didn't even know that the regime had changed, in the absolutely notorious Sinai prison. Have a look.
I mean, it's like something out of
Ben-Hur
novels. You know, The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favourites.
Coming out, blinking in the sunshine.
So I think this is appalling. And actually, there were other stories of people who'd been there 40 years. Oh. You know, they'd literally been locked away as teenagers.
By Assad's father.
That's right. And then they came out, you know, in their 50s. There was one man with, you know, sort of bedraggled beard, and his whole life essentially had been spent.
That man, I know, all he could say, the only word he could say was Aleppo.
That's
Aleppo.
right.
Aleppo. Nothing else. He'd lost the power.
So it shows, I mean, the brutality. We talked about, you know, how Dubai is authoritarian. I mean, Syria under the Assads was a whole different level of brutality.
And there are hope, aren't they, from families of other prisoners that they might be found and released, and including some journalists as well.
Yeah,
family members
and
campaigning.
it was very arbitrary. I mean, the way the Assads operated was essentially if you were an opponent, you would just get locked away. So there were no lawyers, there was no judicial process, there was nothing. And people, you know, there's stories of people going to take their exams as students and then being, you know, whisked away, put in a prison. And that was that. None of their parents or their friends knew what had happened.
What do we think might happen to the Assads now? Because his wife is very heavily implicated in the brutality and the corruption that went on. Now, they've got safe haven now in Russia, as one would expect. But they have clearly committed gross crimes.
Yes.
Is there any prospect, do you think, of them being brought to justice now they're out of the country? Because we saw what happened to Saddam, we saw what happened to Colonel Gaddafi, summary justice.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I doubt we'll see them again. They'll be enjoying their life in Moscow. I mean, they'll be trapped in Moscow or Russia now for the rest of their lives. I doubt Putin will ever give them up. But look, they have overseen, as Kwasi was saying, the most disgusting, brutal, tyrannical regime. I mean, it is a moment to rejoice to see the back of them. There are questions, though, about what the future is for Syria as well.
Of course.
And the future for Syria is for the Syrians to decide, but they need a political process because, look, it's a very complex society, Syria, with lots of different groups, lots of different faith groups, lots of different communities. We want it to move to a democratic, sustainable future, but, you know, it's not necessarily obvious it will go in that direction.
I think for the Assads themselves, I mean, it sounds, you know, fine and dandy that they're in Russia, but these were people who loved, you know, Asma by Bashir's wife is reputed to have, you know, she went to Paris, she spent thousands and thousands of dollars.
Foreign aid money that had been sent.
That they siphoned off. Yep. One of the most spectacular images of the week was his car collection.
Yes.
I don't know whether we saw that. I mean,
did, yes.
Millions and millions of pounds. And he presumably wasn't driving them all the time. I mean, they were just there in the garage. So their lifestyle, I mean, not that anyone should, you know, shed a tear for them, but I think the Russian, it's a semi-captivity, really.
Yeah, a gilded cage.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Very quickly, we've just got a minute left. Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, has joined this debate on taxing junk food. He says it's essential to deal with child obesity.
Like we have with drinks, isn't it?
Like we have with fizzy drinks, exactly.
Drinks,
Are we with or against?
I'm always against that sort of lifestyle taxes because essentially I don't think it alters behaviour that much. All you're doing is poorer people who want to, you know, eat at Subway or whatever, they're going to continue doing that in many instances. So you're just taxing them.
I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't believe it. If it happens...
I think it might.
If it happens, I'll take you both to McDonald's for a Big Mac.
Come on!
I think it might happen. Look, I mean,
it won't happen.
This stuff kept bubbling up when we were in government.
Yeah, it was the Conservatives who brought that stuff in.
And as you know...
Conservative nanny state party
the officials, there are certain officials that you will know when you get into government, finally, that will be pushing this all the time. And at some point, you know, you're going to... I don't know whether it'll be a free vote in the House of Commons or what it will be, because it is a kind of conscience-type lifestyle issue.
I don't think it'll happen.
You don't think it'll happen?
No.
I've seen crazier things happen.
Well, on that note, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you at the end of the programme.